I'm good with that. Allie, you want me to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. All right, well,
perfect.
let's just basically welcome everybody. It really is good to see all of your faces. I think for Brad and I, we email with you guys. Oh, thank you. I finally get my service during a meeting. This never ever happens. This is really exciting. I feel like I'm constantly seeing folks have their kids and folks bring them things, and I'm like, I'm home alone. But yeah, so welcome everybody. Really excited to be here today. We do have a lot to discuss with you, and a lot of updates. This is obviously kind of the only time we can have everybody together to convey a lot of information, but we're going to try and not talk at you for too long, and also to give you some work time. I think that's something we always talk about, is that strong desire from all of you to use this time productively and to actually create something, right? It's not we don't get your brains together in a room a lot. So let's let you actually, use them and use that time wisely. So towards the end of this meeting, we're going to take some time to actually have you get into your working groups with your meta majors and produce something that will hopefully be able to use just within the next few weeks. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But with that, I'm going to pass it off to Jeff to get us started on some of the broader updates that we'll be talking to you about today.
Right. Well, good to see everyone. I appreciate having so many cameras on. It's helpful to see friendly faces and also just kind of get a sense of the reaction on some of these topics. So thanks for being here today. I think we're interested to see how fall quarter is going to go. I think those of you who are meeting with students firsthand or having a better sense of how they're doing, I think one thing that's going to be really informative to us as a college, but also really to a system, is how many of those students stick with us in winter and spring term and beyond, and really say, yeah, this kind of virtual experiment, right, this grand unplanned virtual experiment is working. On that note, I think it's always great if you could remind students of this in your classes. Is next week our registration period starts for the second year in a row. We're going to be doing the combined winter spring registration. We really saw that made a difference with kind of keeping students persisting through spring term if they already had that schedule. So just again, something that you could always help us do is just give a little ping, a little reminder. The college we're currently completing this assessment by the senior leadership team through the Aspen Institute. And one of the things, it kind of asks the current state of affairs, and there's all these different questions. And one question that stuck out in my mind was, do faculty members consistently ask students about their future educational plans, whether that is like, are you enrolled next term? Are you planning to transfer? Are you nearing graduation? So as just somebody who is a really, visible force in students' lives and has a lot of contact to them, those sort of reminders and nudges have been shown through research to have, definitive impact. So definitely something to consider. So I want to start with that. Then these next couple of topics really have to do with some of our efforts regarding to improving issues of race and equity on our campus for our students, our staff, and also for our community. First off, I want to let you know that late October, we rolled out for the first time ever this national assessment of collegiate campus climates. It's a survey that has been used nationally to gather feedback from students on how they feel about issues of race and just racial issues and climate on their campus, what their experiences are. And so students have those, they're getting a number of reminders, but again, that's something that, especially if it makes sense with your course, that you can maybe weave into your comments. Maybe you're teaching stats, so you could talk about this survey and the statistically valid nature of it, the end, things like that. If you're poli-sci, you could talk about giving input, whatever makes sense. But that's out to students right now. It's the first time we've done this survey. It's nationally recognized, and it's something that comes from our partnership in the Race and Equity Alliance. And something we did this time. In the past, it would be like, hey, if you complete the survey, you'll be entered to win a gift card. This time, actually, every student that completes it gets a gift card. And so it's even a little bit more of an incentive to have completion. So just want to let you know that's out there. That's kind of something that's new this year. And I know personally, I'm really excited and interested. I'm mostly interested to see the results, and hope you will be too as we get those. On that note, we have completed 3 of the e-convenings, right? So through our partnership with the Race and Equity Center at USC, we've had 3 of these e-convenings, 3 trainings. I think the first one, it was kind of, I think the center's kind of, I'll say, finding their pace, if you will. I think they were off to a little rocky start with the first ones with some of their logistics, but it seems to be getting better. And individuals have done some trainings on that. I know Scott Lucas, he led the training to a number of different groups on the first one, which was about really building inclusive classrooms. The last training was about, or the training after that was about recognizing and responding to implicit bias. And Amber was one of the faculty members on that one. And then there was also one yesterday, and I'm not sure who the faculty member was on it. Maybe somebody could remind me, which was really confronting anti-Blackness on campus communities. I see you pointing like this, Brad, but I'm not sure who you're pointing to. I know you were on it, or no? Sue Kloss, thank you, is in the chat. So Sue, thanks for participating. So what I've been really appreciative of is that the participants, and especially the faculty leaders who are, trained and savvy educators, are taking information from that and making sure it gets out to our classified employees groups. I know there's a training at the NACS Academic Senate. I would encourage all of you, even if it's, you're not a Senate rep, if you just want to tune in for that training, it's a great piece to get some just kind of on, just in time training, you will, as you do your work. And so those are moving forward. I will share that I think there's still maybe 9 more e-convenings to go this year. I just put a link in the chat to a Google document. And so if you're interested in participating in any of these trainings, just go into the Google document and put your name under the individual training. Each training is maxed out at 5 individuals. And we usually try and have a balancing act of, a faculty member, a classified staff member, a member of the administrative team, things like that. But put your name in on your top 2 or 3 that you're interested in, and we'll definitely work to get everyone participating one way or another, as we want to ensure with 12 different trainings that we don't just have the same 5 people go to all 12 trainings, but hopefully when it's done, we have 50 or 60 different people who had the opportunity to participate this, and then again, having them shared out through campus. So it has kind of a ripple effect through our campus. So that's going on. Feel free to stop me at any time. I'm just going to keep moving through these topics, or at least this equity topic. Let me share one other thing about it, and then, but feel free to stop me, and then I'll also kind of pause for, bless you. So the final thing is I want to let this group know what's happening with the name coach rollout. And this is something we did have a discussion about this on our President's Advisory Council just yesterday, and Treva, Scott, and Melanie are all in that group, and they're definitely a good faculty voice in that group. And they did share about us having like a further training on it down the line, so expect to receive more information on it. I just want to let you know what's happening. But basically, Name Coach is a tool that we've had for a while through our partnership with the Online Education Initiative. It was going to go away this December 31st. We made the decision as a college to kind of double down and license it ourselves. And we have been trying to encourage more of our staff and students to do that. Scott Lucas put out an email with a link to a video that really shows you how to set up Name Coach, how to use it in Canvas, and some of the why you should consider doing it. And I think all Scott and Trevor also have done some on how to set up your name badge as well, which is something you can put in your email signature. And so we're trying to do it on the staff end, but also want to let you know that Antonio Benitez, who I think many of you know, past LTCC student, went on to UC Berkeley and then went on to work at Portland State for a while. He's back in Tahoe, and he's working on some special projects under my guidance. And one of his is on this Name Coach implementation, specifically getting it out to students. So in the coming month or so, at the end of this term and the beginning of next term, we're going to be making a big push to get students to do their Name Coach in Canvas. I think, and Trevor, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you had shared with me the other day that we had about 50 students or so who had completed it campus-wide.
Yeah, it was 50, just from within Canvas. And so kind of to be clear, there is a little bit of a difference between this name badge, which is free right now, where you can go and include that in your signature block, in Outlook and that type of thing, compared to just generating a recording of your name within Canvas. So, but there is going to be further integration as we move forward, but that's just where it just a little bit of the difference for right now. So when people are doing that.
Yeah, thank you for that clarification. And what we're trying to do is trying to make a push to have more and more students do that into Canvas, enter their name into Canvas. So that way you or your peers as an instructor, you're able to kind of welcome them, greet them, pronunciate their name, correctly and accurately, for the first time and they're on from there. And I think one thing that was kind of brought up as an idea, you as faculty, I mean, this could be something, I'll leave it up to you of what makes the most sense. But as you see these materials come out at the start of the winter quarter, it seems like it's a good logical first week of class activity, complete your name coach. Maybe that's part of your introduction activity. Maybe it's a first post, maybe it's an extra credit thing, whatever you feel is appropriate as a faculty member in the class, but to get your students to actually do that. Because the more students who populate that, it doesn't just live, John, I noticed you have your name coach up on some of your online classes for yourself. It's not just if they do it for John's class that sticks with him, it actually allows other users down the line to have that. So we're really trying to get the students to populate it. And we're also working on, for our new students, having it integrated in our CCC apply. So as students complete an application, they'll do that there. And then that way, if a counselor or somebody in enrollment services or financial aid's picking up the phone to call a student, they'll be able to get that pronunciation correct right off the bat. So I'm going to take a quick breath there and just say those are just a couple of highlights of things that we're working on related to our goal of equity and inclusion here on the LTCC campus. And really, Name Coach was something that was on our radar, but it really got a boost out of that first e-convening, and Scott's presentation and the team's presentation from those findings said, you know what, we need to elevate this. And so we've kind of put some resource and time behind that. And the hope is that our participation in the Alliance will bring more of those type examples to us. So with that, I'm just gonna take a quick pause. Any questions on anything I shared so far, especially in that equity goal space, or the links that were shared, or anyone want to add to anything that I may have missed on those topics?
I'm just kind of curious, are folks using the Name Coach at all, or does anybody have their kind of name badge already in their signature from some of the trainings that went out? Seeing a couple nods. So yeah, because we actually went through and did it yesterday, and it is super, super easy. So, Scott, I think you just put some of the resources in there. So I would encourage folks to just like copy down some of those URLs. It's really easy to put in your own link. And I think it's already made me start reflecting on, how we can integrate it more college wide. So super simple and some good first steps there in the chat for you guys.
Great, thank you. Anything else? All right, I'll keep moving. I didn't miss anyone, right? Okay. If I'm not seeing you wave your hand, there's a bunch of little boxes up here, so let me know. I also just want to let you know that we continue to make progress on guided pathways. That you're going to do a lot of work later today on the meta majors. You're going to get an update on Program Mapper from Walter and Sarah Marquez as well. And I know you're going to do some meta major group work, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, other than to say, I think each year we're trying to, at first we were talking about launching meta majors, then we're talking about solidifying meta majors, and now it's really about like kind of landing the ship, if you will, or like making meta majors just part of how we operate. We have done the programming to get it all the way into CCC Apply. We have a lot of outward facing stuff to students that communicates what it is. But of course, our students that have been on campus for a while, if they came in before those little entry points, they still may be like, what's a meta major? Why does it matter? So do know that we're continuing to make, put some effort behind that, and you're going to get more of an update later today. So I don't want to go into it too detailed, because I think I don't want to steal anyone's content or thunder for later in the presentation. But related to meta majors, I will share with you that the college has signed on and we're participating in this Degrees When Due initiative. And basically what that's about is helping students that are near or have even actually earned a degree but didn't actually receive a degree get one. And so our first major effort is going to be to identify students who in the last 3 years, they were a degree seeking student and they've completed more than 75 units, but they don't have a degree. And they're no longer enrolled. So basically reaching out to students that, you're 75% of the way there, you're close, you intended to get a degree at one point, but something happened. And so trying to recapture them And we're going to be applying for this trustee fellowship grant from the chancellor's office, which I think we'll be able to get some resource to put behind this initiative. This is also something that Antonio Benitez in my office is working on in terms of some of this outreach of identifying these students and trying to recapture students that have done a lot of the work and bring them back in to really help them get over the finish line to their degrees. And so we'll be sharing more with you about that as it comes. It's still very much in kind of, I would say, the infancy stage, but part of it is about, so we put so much focus on like, let's bring in these new students, right? So this is really not like, hey, I'm trying to get the adult learner that's in industry that hasn't been to college, or the recent high school graduate. Those are two efforts we've done a lot of and will continue to do. But this is more about who are the students that made it really far and just didn't finish. And let's find out why they didn't finish and how we bring them back. And so that's an initiative that we're taking part of. And it's pretty interesting because it's one of the few initiatives that we're involved with that actually has partners both at the community college level, but the CSU and the UC level. So all these different partners from these different types of institutions are trying to do the same things. We're trying to recapture students that were at or near completion but didn't get a degree. I mean, obviously, if you're at a UC, you're talking about a bachelor's degree, we're talking about associate's degree, but we're sharing best practices and ideas across these two different types of institutions. So that's something we're working on. You'll be hearing more about that, but again, it's really about trying to get these students back. I think also one thing that will be kind of tied to this initiative is also finding that there's many students that and I think this will help for kind of your department stats, and you may know some of these students where they've completed the units for a degree or for a certificate, but they didn't receive it, right? They didn't apply for it and they didn't receive it. And we're going to be doing some data analysis now through kind of our degree audit tool and some other institutional effectiveness tools that we haven't had in the past to be able to figure out what students are out there that maybe earned a certificate or degree and did not get it, and then trying to reach out to them about getting those assigned to them as well. And that's helpful because I always believe the student should, if you earn the certificate, get the certificate, right? If you earn the degree, get that on your resume. But also for all of you as faculty leaders, and especially those of you that are department chairs, it will give a better representation, not just of who petitioned for graduation and got the degree, but actually who in your program actually earned the degree. So that's all tied into that kind of degrees when due initiative that we're working on. And again, we'll be sharing more about this as we go. A couple of these things we'll do some deeper trainings on, but it's mostly want to use this opportunity to make sure you're up to speed on some things that are, important and timely. So feel free to stop me. I'll try and pause here and there. A couple other items. I think the other thing that, as those of you know, is typically faculty hiring prioritization time for the college. Typically the first, or at least last couple of years, the first December academic senate meeting is when we've brought our response to the resolution that was passed by the academic senate with the academic senate's priorities through their process. And we're on track for that. So we will be bringing our response on that first December meeting. I think it's Friday, December 4th or so. John or Bruce or somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. So expect to see that. I will just say that, right now, it's a balancing act. We're trying to gather all this information, right? What's the state budget going to say in January? All right. We know it's not going to be good news. We know it's not going to be good news, but is it going to be like, is it going to be bad news or terrible news? So that's one big question. And then also, yeah, it's not a question of will be good or bad news. Is it going to be bad or worse? Is kind of what we're trying to figure out. But if it's bad, we're able to do some things that we can't do if it's worse. Also, there's some potential retirements, and thank you to those of you that are considering retirement that have shared your intents with us or even formalized that with a letter. That really helps us for planning. And I know there's a couple of those that may still be not 100% formalized, but also knowing what faculty members we may be losing due to retirement does help us make decisions about recommending replacements. So do know we will be bringing that forward and doing our best to ensure it has a good quality explanation and it's backed up by, kind of good data and rationale at that December academic senate meeting. And then the final thing I'll just foreshadow here a little bit, and I'm not certain of this, but I think many of you that have followed this process closely the last couple of years have seen, we brought a recommendation in December, and then, either there was a new retirement after the first of the year or the economic situation changed. And then we were able to come back in January, late January, early February and say, you know what, we're going to add an additional position on. And by no means could I commit to that right now because just the world is so uncertain with the economics and the pandemic. But all I would say is, you know, whatever we bring in December is what we commit to, but there's always a chance that there could be more. It's not certain that there could be more, but there's always a chance. So just know that's kind of a balancing act that we deal with every time, just due to wanting to get out early to hire versus the pressures of not knowing the true state budget information until we get later in the year. So those are kind of in conflict a little bit, but we are working on that. And, you know, again, expect an update from that at the 1st December Senate meeting. Any questions on that? All right. So my last one, these two kind of bullet points, you know, I could have grouped these a little bit. It was really, you know, the first one was about race and equity. The second chunk of bullet points were about completion. And this third chunk is really about just COVID-19 response and just kind of meaning business continuity and campus operations and class offerings in response to the pandemic and what you could expect. So I want to share a little bit with this group in terms of what's informing us right now, and then also what you could expect. And I know I have the deans in here as well, and they could tune in if I you know, miss anything. I think you know, first I'll just kind of give you a couple big picture things. As we're continuing to better refine our COVID practices on campus. In terms of our contact tracing, we actually have a pretty robust contact tracing program now to figure out if there was somebody that had a potential exposure, who they've been in contact with and who needs a quarantine. The use of the Campus Clear app for the questionnaires has, I think, been a lot better than these kind of standalone surveys that we had going out. And then we also, just so this group knows, we have, you know, kind of a robust partnership with the testing center right now. So all of our housing students that live in LTCC housing, all of our student athletes and all of our fire cadets are getting weekly testing right now. And part of that is because those students are in high contact, small space, right? So we're doing weekly testing for that. We've opened up testing for our on-campus essential employees. They could go to the testing center during their shift. And the reason for that is what we've seen is that there are some cases where somebody may be asymptomatic, and the early detection really makes a big difference of kind of identifying that early on that they may be exposed to COVID and getting them in quarantine and kind of off campus or out of activity. So we're continuing to build up that strong partnership with the testing center. We've also secured some of our own testing kits through human resources. Sometimes we have a positive test or an inconclusive test, and we need to go back and get an additional test. And so we have some for that to do that quickly. I'll even share, I had sent out an email, I think it was last Saturday. These are starting to blend together, but I think it was last Saturday talking about a COVID exposure on campus of an employee. And I was actually I was with that employee on Thursday, so I was in the 14-day quarantine. But as is our process, we have them go get a secondary test. And what ended up turning out is this person got 2 subsequent negative tests there's a prescribed period of time after that first test. And it was actually determined that the first test was a false positive. And I share this not so much to share the details, other than to let you know that we actually have a pretty robust contact tracing, testing program, and kind of early detection and communication program going on with all these things that is informing our efforts. And I think as we get into the winter months and there's less, you know, opportunity to go eat outside and sit on your friends' patios and stuff like that, I think we're all expecting that we're going to see, higher positivity cases in our community, as has been the national trend. So we're using these tools to help kind of inform us and put us in a better position. Related to that, you want to talk a little bit about winter spring schedule, our decisions related to that, and the timelines associated with it. So again, just to real simply put, our winter quarter schedule very much follows our fall quarter schedule. All right. So in fall quarter, predominantly everything is distance ed or enhanced virtual education, except we're doing some hybrid labs, predominantly in the science areas. We have some small group face-to-face for things like EMT, fire science, wilderness, athletics training, athletics conditioning. But other than that, predominantly online. And so winter quarter is gonna pretty much match that. And what I will share with you is we do now have, as of October 1st, we do have new guidance. It's called the California Department of Public Health Guidance for Institutions of Higher Education, and it guides what type of things we could do under each color code for the county. So if you kind of are tracking the color codes, there's orange, which is moderate. Above that is red, and at the highest is the purple. And currently what we're doing in our fall quarter is allowable under all three of those tiers, all the way up to the purple. And that's what we have planned for winter term as well, is basically to follow these same kind of offerings, which should be allowed under up to the purple tier. Our spring quarter, as has been shared with number of groups across campus, I'm sure those of you that are involved in scheduling are aware of this as well. We did offer some additional courses. In addition to, we kept, the Fire Academy, the EMT, this hybrid science labs, the wilderness ed, those type of things that we've talked about already. But we did add some additional, Clinton, it's in the, if you just go to board docs to the board meeting, and we could get you the link, but just good for everyone to know, is every board meeting we have a COVID-19 update. And thanks, Brad, for that addition. Every board meeting we have a COVID update, and it's in there along with all the latest and greatest kind of decisions and tools. But maybe, Lori or Brad, or if somebody could find the link to the last board COVID update, because I think that one actually outlines the guidance pretty well, and maybe drop it in the chat, that'd be great. Clinton, thanks for that question. So basically, again, what we're doing now in fall and what we're offering under winter allows us to work under orange, red, or purple. For the spring term, we're proposing to have a handful more of kind of small group classes, including some small group lectures. We also have a lot of PE late start. I can't remember the exact date. It's on or around, May 4th or somewhere in that ballpark. And we purposely did that with that May 4th date, knowing that, hey, we're more likely to be able to be outside, that the world's more likely to have the virus under control. And so those are some of the things that we're kind of informing our decision. And so we'll have to continue to watch and see how things go. Basically, the week of March 15th is when we're going to make a determination about those April classes that start the first week of the term, April 4th or so. And then we have another decision late April to make those decisions about the late start PE classes on May 4th. So that's pretty well documented. I think it's actually in the board docs, maybe one earlier. I don't know if somebody wants to give that link, or Ali, if you have those exact dates that you can put in the chat. But basically what I want this group to know is everything that we're doing and that is scheduled for fall and winter is allowable within the high, all the way to the purple tier. And part of that is because we were being way more conservative this fall, right? Like this fall, when we were in the orange tier, we actually could have had lecture classes at 50%, labs at 100%, and student gathering is up to 200 students, right? That's what it was allowable in the orange tier. But we were operating much more conservatively. We were operating as if we were under the purple tier. And that still is our plan for winter, as we think it's likely for those tiers to shift and change, especially during the winter months. Now, as we go to April, our plan for our additional courses, we would be required to either be in the red or the orange tier or below in order for that to move forward. So just know that's what we're using as our guidance. And what's nice is this is state guidance. It's not something that we've created ourselves. So it's not like we have to decide this locally here, LTC. It's state guidance. It's very clear. It's based on science and data. And so that in that regard, I mean, for me as a leader, it gives me a level of comfort, because it's not like, Jeff's just out on a limb making a decision based on, my gut, right? It's very much guided by the state and by the science. And, I think, I'm not going to get too much into it. I know folks probably, there's a lot of, some stuff came out from the CDC this week about kind of the timeline for, vaccine disbursement and the types of groups that would get those first and when that would be available to the general public. And so without getting too much into those details, just know we're following all that sort of stuff as well. Because obviously the timeline of vaccine availability to essential workers, which they're talking about teachers being part of that, but then also the general public will make a difference in what we can do when. So that's by no means everything we're working on, but definitely, if somebody asks me kind of, hey, what's top of the list? Issues of race and equity, COVID-19 response, and keeping students in classes during this, and then also still trying to make progress on our completion agenda. And I think the final thing is, I think that's something, and I'd be curious to hear from any of you if you're willing to share, here at a later point, is, we're concerned about losing students during this time just because they're saying, I have screen fatigue, or I don't have a quiet space to study. I mean, that's actually the biggest thing we've heard from students in some of our informal feedback is like, hey, thanks for the hotspot, thanks for the Chromebook, but can you open the library? Or can I have a quiet place to study? Or, I got my younger siblings running around here doing, homeschool, and I'm working, it's just too much going on. So our hope is to try and help students just stay engaged and continue to make progress during this time so they can kind of come out of the pandemic on the other side, with a degree or closer to a degree, and have made, progress during this. And then I think the final thing, just so this group knows, we did hand out another almost $50,000 worth of CARE grants. So those are $500 per student. And we have another round of those going out that we'll do in January as well. And so I've definitely been the I don't know as many students as but the handful of students that I know, I've referred them to those, and I also tell them like, hey, stay enrolled for January, and you're going to have another opportunity to get another one of those to kind of help incentivize your participation and help offset some of your expenses. And also, if you're unable to work or you need to work less to go in school, this will help with that as well. And that's kind of the big picture update, but happy to take questions or open it up for comments if folks have some things to fill in that I may have missed. I saw some like potential hand raising, man. Like Christy kind of scratched her beanie. Sarah moved her arm. I thought a hand was going up. I got excited.
I know it's a lot of information to digest, but yeah, so we'll give a minute for folks to think if they just have any questions, comments. And definitely, I am also curious to hear if anybody wanted to share how students are feeling about fall, what they're saying, what they're thinking about moving forward.
Maybe we could start with that to warm it up. What are you hearing from your students?
May I offer my experience this quarter has been more and more students asking for additional time to complete assignments because of interruptions while they're working at home, be it other family members or having to go to work. You try to tell them to plan their time accordingly, but it seems like it's a real wild card kind of feeling out there that I'm getting. And I recognize that some students just have procrastinated, but I'm seeing it from students that have shown quality work, timely work in the past, and now just challenged to try to stay on track, whether it's just being home all the time or what other factors, I'm not sure, but it just seems to be more of it than I've had in the past.
I mean, I'll just say, I think even folks in this room are dealing with that, myself included, who has a crying daughter right now. I mean, people's childcare has been thrown for a loop, and I think we're all battling some different challenges, and our students included.
Yeah, I'll chime in on and add to that, John. I'm seeing a lot of the same things. I'm also seeing that several of the students that are taking online courses, because they're taking the online EVE courses, like for whatever reason, I think they bit off, several students bit off more than they can chew as far as, oh, well, it's an online course or it's an EVE course. Well, I'll go ahead and take 2 of them or 3 of them instead of just my normal load. And yeah, I've had comments from several students that they just bit off more than they can chew.
I'll add an example that sort of builds on some of the examples we've heard already. Yesterday, I had one of my students describe, she has a small business, and for the last week, with the dramatic increase in COVID just here in town, she's had almost all of her clients cancel, almost all over a week. And the vast majority of those were doing so because they had to isolate because they'd been exposed.
To add a little bit of positivity, I've had some students say that they are actually pretty pumped that we finally figured out how to offer classes on a schedule that they can actually do. So some of my students are like, oh, wow, this is actually more convenient for me than it has been, because I could never attend. I've always been interested in this one particular class. It never is offered at a time that I can do it. And now the silver lining to the whole COVID situation is now I can complete my education with all the classes that I really wanted from home. I mean, it's not ideal in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of other students out there who are saying that, you know, they don't like online as much, but it is convenient for a lot of other students as well.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say all the students or imply all the students, Scott. I've got several students that are in that same boat as well, and who live off the hill, you know, that would never be able to take the courses that we're offering because they live over in the Bay Area or down in San Diego or, you know, wherever. So there's some good stuff too.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to elaborate really quickly on my point, and the point I was making about the woman whose business has been impacted by COVID in that manner. That's not a one-off. There's a financial stress that is an undercurrent that a lot of our students are experiencing, and that's what I was attempting to provide an example of.
One of the things I wanted to mention is very interesting for me because I used to be an adjunct in Sacramento American River College, and there are many students try to get into anatomy, physiology classes. Always classes are full. It's so hard. But many students this year came to LTCC from those far areas, and they just said we don't have enough. We can't find any class in Sacramento or other places. Can I get into your class? So I got like more students for LTCC, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I think, Banaz, thanks for sharing that, and Scott for thank you everyone for sharing their points, but I want to kind of build on something that Banaz and Scott said is something that we're seeing as part of this, and we want all of you to really be thinking about and considering is what have we done during this pandemic that will continue in the future? Like, I know one thing we've done from an administration standpoint is we will continue to have a hotspot in a Chromebook checkout after the pandemic's over. Like that makes a difference for students. We're going to add that to our lending library resources for years to come. So that's something that we're committing to. I think something else we've seen is, and I don't think we want it for every section, every class, but sometimes for some classes, offering a section in Eve, right, is a good option to get some students that maybe wouldn't be as available, or, you know, distance ed feels not enough high touch for them, but they can't make the on-campus class, or they're from out of the area. And so I think that's something we want you to be thinking about. You don't need to answer that today, but as we look to, you know, like fall quarter 2021 and beyond, are there some things we've done with course modalities or just approaches to offering services that you think have a place in our future, and not necessarily in all cases, but in some cases? And so I've definitely seen some things like that from where I stand. And yeah, Cranium Cafe for counseling, absolutely. And the thing is, students are getting used to this level of convenience and access to us. And so I think we're going to have to continue to provide that. So, but I also, and you know, I'll let you share your own stories, but I know I've heard anecdotally from a handful of you about courses that you have. It's like, wow, I can't believe I have this many numbers. Or you're talking about students that you have all over the state, or even all over the nation, that are participating in your classroom. So there are some silver linings and some benefits that we're experiencing. And so what we want to try and do is just learn from those and kind of apply some of the best parts of this really challenging and terrible experience, you know, to our future.
I agree. I think that Eve can provide a really good compromise for some students between actually having a face-to-face class as opposed to just a traditional online, class. It is challenging, obviously having Eve and not having face-to-face like we do now. But I think, offering Eve as a modality moving forward might make a lot of sense to give the students who do thrive in that kind of an environment that option. Certainly not as a replacement, but as an additional modality, I can, see a definite place for it. And it could help with enrollments too.
Agreed. Scott?
It was a little clunky and archaic back when I was taking a class, but they had this video camera in the back of the room that was recording the live class, and then they satellite, beamed it into another classroom, like in another city. And there's this weird delay, but the students could ask questions of the instructor and stuff like that. It's like, seems pretty possible to be doing that in all of our face-to-face classes moving forward into the future. Is like you have this face-to-face thing that's going on, and then you have the Eve, session via Zoom or whatever platform it is operating simultaneously, so that you can up your enrollments for those students that live in San Diego and those students that are living currently and want the face-to-face interaction.
I think it might be something we need to pay attention to as well, though, in that it might affect transferability, at least for a lot of the science classes, because there are places like UNR's med school specifically calls out on their admission requirements, online classes will not be accepted. And they've rescinded that during COVID. But there are definitely some places in the sciences where we need to pay attention to transferability, and are we considering Eve full distance, and what are the 4-year schools going to do when it comes to accepting that in the future as we move out of COVID in next year sometime.
If I may, I was going to share that I've got students in my Zoom class that, because I always ask them, how do you feel about this versus face-to-face? And I had a few students go, well, it's pretty cool, because if I miss class, it's not I come by your office and can you give me a highlight of what you went over. I get to watch the whole thing, and it's transcribed, and it's like they never missed it. So there is that advantage too. And I think it speaks to where some of you have said about the enrollment and encouraging people to take the classes. So.
I'd like to add, I think that this experience has honestly revolutionized my way of teaching, and my students in my art history class are responding extremely well to the Eve that we're doing. I have no intention of reversing when I go back to doing face-to-face. And Scott Lucas, you're right. I totally am planning on doing these hybrid where I can do a face-to-face in the classroom and be broadcasting and recording the lectures and the discussions in class via Zoom, and then uploading those. And then my student who's taking a class from South Korea can continue to take that class even when we're back face-to-face. In my art classes, having my demonstrations published online and they can go back and look at those is a huge win for my students. I'm one of the faculty that are currently back at the classroom doing face-to-face classes on a really small scale. And I have to tell you, those students are really excited to be back in class. Having a little bit, even with the mask and the separation, just having that social interaction they are just glowing in the classroom when we're doing ceramics. And then I've had students in my class also discuss the differences between these Zoom meetings versus fully online, where there isn't really any face-to-face, even Zoom interactions. And I'm not hearing very much positive about the full online experience. They feel like they're lost. They don't like recordings from faculty that are happening at a different time where they're not able to stop the faculty and ask a question. They just fall off the class and they drop out. Even students, and it's their goal, it's their major, they're not happy with that. And so in relationship, they're saying how they really like these Zoom meetings where it's as good, if not better, than an in-class situation. I have students who are, like I said, in South Korea, and a student in San Rafael who is a third grade teacher in my art history class who can't actually be in my scheduled class Zoom, but then I'm uploading the Zooms. She's getting an excellent grade in the class. My tests, my exams in art history have completely changed. I'm not doing these fill in the blanks or these rote matching or A, B, C, multiple choice. I'm forced to, because it's an open book situation, I have to look at it differently, and I'm forced to ask these students to reflect more. And I've now had my art history exams, they're almost harder now, but because I'm asking them to do more synthesizing of the book. And it's okay that they have the book open now, where I used to be like, oh, closed book, you can't do that. You have to have it here. You have to put it all in your mind. And I thought about that, and I felt like we were losing a lot of students in the art history, for example. It's a super hard class. And my students are doing excellent right now. I'm really impressed.
Great. Well, thank you, you all, for sharing. I mean, I appreciate this. I just appreciate, especially this last 5-10 minutes is the most engaging part of our time together here today. And I do appreciate hearing from you. And I think one thing that's kind of occurring to me, there are a number of ideas, is we might pull together a small group of individuals from across campus and ask for a couple of faculty voices to be part of this, to really help us think about what are some things we did during the last, by the time this is over, the last 12 months or whatever it ends up being, that we want to carry forward, right? Because I think there are, and I think all of us are doing this individually. You're gonna, Brian's talking about how his instruction's changing and it will never change again. But like, what are some things that we maybe really want to codify as an institution that become part of what we offer and how we do things moving forward? So thank you for that. Thanks for letting me join you for this first little bit. I do appreciate having the opportunity to kind of tune in and see some faces. I'll let you know. I think Allie and Brad we're missing Michelle Risen, but I just want to let you know from my standpoint, Allie and Brad are doing a great job. They've been total workhorses, and they have a good day planned for you here today. So I'm going to go ahead and bid you adieu, say goodbye, and leave you in Allie and Brad's hands. And again, thanks for letting me join you today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. And yeah, thank you everybody for sharing. That was, Brad, I don't know about you, but that made me have just a whole lot of warm and fuzzies in terms of just being so impressed by this faculty and how much you've embraced the change and how much you've embraced different ways of moving forward in this environment. I think it's really impressive, and I don't think everybody everywhere has a staff that's quite as ready to jump in as this one. So I think you're all pretty fantastic. So thanks for that.
Yeah, same. I think we said it in March when you guys were reinventing what you've done for years and decades on the fly, virtually overnight. And we're going to continue to say it again. We're so lucky. This is a great group of faculty, super student focused. Everybody says that, but we really are. And it's pretty amazing because I hear from students all the time that, and Jeff says it, right, which is this is the only stable thing in their lives. Their worlds are upside down. Their jobs are really in flux. They never know what kind of benefits they might have from, month to month from the government. Rents are through the roof right now because of so many people moving up here and working from home in Tahoe. And so you guys are providing something really tremendous for our students. I'm really curious to see what will happen in winter once we open up those registrations on Monday, kind of at the end of next week. Jeff kind of alluded to it, which is, because I know that there's tons of challenges for students, but we're making making some lemonade too. So thanks everybody. I tip my cap to you guys.
Yes, to the lemonade. All right, on that note, I do want to be able to pass this off to Melanie to talk a little bit about textbook selection processes. Before I do that, I will just note, Sarah Marquez, thank you for your note in the chat. And I think folks are defining kind of EVE attendance differently. And I think our guidance has always been that, you know, students should be attending as often as possible and should plan to be able to attend, but we should offer some level of flexibility when a student is signing up for an EVE course. But that is something that we've talked about as well, just at the administrative level of hoping to define that more clearly moving forward for students, for staff, for faculty. So it's something on our radar. But I will pass this off to Mel now. I will just kind of start this by saying this is one of those areas where I think Melanie has made just the most delicious lemonade out of a lot of textbook selection challenges. I think she's used the opportunity that presented itself to come up with a really creative solution that can solve a lot of challenges that both students and faculty have been having. That said, it's a new process. So this is kind of our chance to make sure everybody knows about and understands this new process, and just to get any feedback that you have. So Mel, I'll let you take it away, and let's just kind of go beyond the 10 minutes. I think some of our forthcoming presentations might be a little short as well. So we should be good.
Okay, I think I can be quick too. I did see Treva's hand up. Treva, did you have a question?
No, it's fine. I was just kind of the Eve thing of finally getting that answered. I was like, you know, I guess it's kind of how you deal with attendance in your face-to-face class. I mean, do you take roll? Do you do participation points? You would want to mirror that, I would think, in the Eve environment to address the idea that it's a, you know, it's not an online course. Online are different, you know, hybrid and online courses have their distinction in Title V of what they are and what that means. So just, that was it.
Thank you, Trevor. That's a good note.
So I'll share our slides from Senate from just a couple weeks ago. I signed up for a free Prezi trial and I learned that you can animate your slides, so this is just one quick minute that I think covers the basics of what the issue is and what we're aiming for. Lori gave me permission. And I'm just gonna hit play. Can you all see the video?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should there be sound, Mel?
Nope. I can narrate though. So our current process, and I know from the folks in this room that in theory the process was not working the way we hoped it would be. So next. Some of the major issues, folks just missing, you know, some adjuncts were not hired in time. Faculty were sending in, and I saw this quite a lot this year where you all were like, here's my faculty Enlight confirmation. Why isn't it on the website? You know, I did this back in June or July. So the bookstore website just not being up to date. OER selections, especially if you had set it previously for previous quarters, weren't being reflected. And we're students and the library, we were just caught off guard, especially with shipping delays. So tapping into that Tahoe Clear, making things more transparent for our students. And I think this first one's really important, that more often than not, we're building from the previous textbook selections. It's not like it's brand new every quarter. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel every quarter. And this is where we're at. We are, the library created a book list based on these past quarters, past year from the bookstore. And as of this morning, Kimber guesstimated about 65% of faculty confirmations, which is awesome. The instruction office this week, Kelsey and Sarah, thank you. You're following up with any unconfirmed. And then we're going to toss it over to the bookstore to go ahead and update their website and stock. You know, in normal years, it would be stocking the shelves, but this was just getting it out there onto the website so students know what to buy, especially as they're registering for winter. And, you know, Google Sheet, best thing is we can all see it live, and I'll click over to that in a moment. So if there's any, I know, can we Google Sheets will fix things. Plus, and this is like my favorite part, is that we can link to things that the bookstore just can't. So when we have options, I'll show an example of Beth Marinelli's textbook selections. It's, you know, it's a PDF that we can provide access to in this book list. We can also allow room for various editions of a text.
That's my favorite. One book list to rule them all.
So let's see.
Yeah, and so I'll just say the library has taken on, and Melanie in particular, definitely a heavy lift here, but you know, they've been fielding so many of these questions from students for so long. I'm thinking, and I'm hopeful that all of the hard work that they'll be doing to monitor this book list will eventually lighten their load, because they'll have access to the information without having to send 15 emails back and forth between faculty to try and figure out what it is exactly that students need.
Yeah, and one of the challenges with, you know, the bookstore using a proprietary software is that after that current quarter is over, that information is lost. We no longer have access to it. So that's where we are building on what selections have been made before. So here's just what I mentioned. Are you all seeing the Google Sheet?
Yeah.
Yes. So for something like Psych, it's a PDF that is available, and that information can really make or break a student's decision about whether or not to take a particular section of a course, if they can see that information is freely available. And quite a few of you have responded with a range of editions, which is awesome. So again, that's something that couldn't be reflected on the bookstore website, but can be noted here. So ideally students will be able to see, oh, okay, anything from X edition to X edition is fine. The bookstore just defaults to the most current edition. So questions. It is not linked anywhere yet, and I'd love feedback on how to make it happen. This is kind of, you know, it's our first iteration of the book list, and in my mind, I think this information should be publicly available. I think it would mean a lot to students to give them time to find used editions, or, you know, to kind of shop around. And I personally would like to put it out to the world, but that's also one of the things that I think that's why we couldn't just have an editable Google Sheet to begin with, because it's really easy to just like accidentally delete a column or two.
I'm asking this question because now I don't know how it's linked or to what. Some students, I have like a couple of students that bought the wrong book because they saw another book in Passport. I think it's linked to the schedule. So I think I should mention that, but that Google Doc editable looks way better. Thank you, Melanie.
Yeah, I know we had some issues this year with the bookstore and the responsiveness. now RAL is on Cranium Cafe, so students can chat with him there. And that's a good question, Kata. I know there's something about a script that Bilobico was using, and I don't know quite where that ended up.
There's some sort of process where Bill was pulling from bookstore website, and it's a manual process on his end. So I'll say we don't have the answer to that one yet, but that's kind of part of this ongoing effort to make this all more transparent for students. I will say, as part of our work to make it more clear for students when they're registering for courses, I know there was also confusion about whether they were registering for a hybrid or an EVE or a DE course. So in our coding of those courses, which hopefully will be accurate on Monday, in addition to seeing what modality courses are in, students should be able to see if a course is zero textbook cost as well. That will be listed in their web registration. So that's one way that this information will be getting out there. But also, once we have this process fine-tuned, and that's part of what talking to you all about this today, is once we have, like a lot of buy-in, once we know that we're getting the right confirmations, once we know that these book lists really are solid and sound, and this is kind of our first go at it, I think we will be exploring how do we, A, make this more public? How do we share this information more publicly with students? And then B, how do we integrate it into Passport, and what types of solutions can Bill help us come up with? So yeah, those are kind of our ongoing next steps or next iterations of this project.
And since the library will be maintaining it, we have access to that information. We're better able to answer the students' questions. So before I would have to just email you, I'd say, hey, student, you can contact the instructor. I will contact the instructor. I'll copy the bookstore. It was just a lot of runaround. So now we can look up and say, well, here's what's been used in prior quarters. That helps us with the quarterly lending library. And it helps us give students that, that the most accurate, up-to-date information.
Great. Any other questions or comments? If you haven't checked the book list for your books for next quarter, please make sure you check it and email Melanie. If there are adjuncts in your department who have not gotten back to her, you should have received or will be receiving an email just copying you and the adjunct so that you can potentially help guide them to what text selection they could make. And just for a reminder, if you don't have that faculty confirmed checkbox, the text that's listed in there will not be ordered. So you really do need to confirm with Melanie, yes, this is the right textbook.
This is Michael. I have a question for Mel. I didn't send any text information because the only, I'm in ISP in the winter and I'm on a blind course. And so I wasn't sure if that information should be sent on the blind course, but the blind course, and maybe Ali can tell me something about this. I'm kind of assuming it will open because it's the designated promise course, but I don't know if that has anything to do with that decision or not. But I can also at the last minute do zero textbook costs. So
it's a designated promise course. It definitely should be open. That sounds like a weird scheduling oversight that I will look into. Okay. But yeah, and so I would say even for blind courses, send in that information just so it's there and ready so that things are ordered in advance, right? Because sometimes a blind might open up, days prior to the course, but you want the bookstore to be prepared with any materials that they need to have. So I would say always send it in for any course you will be teaching. And I'm going to look into that. What class is that? English 102? What would it be?
It's an evening class. It's 6 o'clock. It's a 101.
Okay.
I don't know. Julie, do you know the section number offhand? I don't.
It's section 3.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. Kels, we'll connect on that.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Melanie. And unless anyone else has any other comments, I think we
Mike
can.
has a question.
I have a question.
Please go for it.
So I just want to fully understand that right now the current process is that we will check in with the Google Docs with the library, and we're doing the faculty, the Enlight as well at the bookstore. We're doing both of those processes right now.
That's a good question. No, you don't have to. RAL is forwarding anything from Faculty Enlight to the library right now, in case there's some folks who haven't heard about this new book list. The goal is to just hand this like complete book list over to the bookstore, as soon as next week. So you won't have to do both. They will take what's on this list, and as long as they can get it, if it's not some like obscure editions of a rare book, as long as they can post it, they'll just work from our book list, from the library's book list.
Okay, my second question is, I can't remember because I don't have the Google Docs right here in front of me, but I know in the bookstore it does not do special topics. And so do we have a process for special topics?
Allie, we created the list both from previous quarters and then from the schedule, right?
Yeah. So if a course is a special topic, it should appear in the book list that Melanie keeps, and then it should have its own column.
Okay, but for sure it's not in the bookstore. I checked it several times, and the bookstore does not have the special topics.
That's interesting. Can you shoot me and Melanie an email about the specific course you're talking about?
It's the promise class, yeah, but I will.
INT 131. It is in the book list.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not in the bookstore right now.
Yeah, we are learning all sorts of things about the bookstore's processes. More than I ever wanted to know about Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah,
I just want to make one comment that I think you're doing an amazing job, Mel, because for the first time, my students all have access to the books. They can start the quarter with the book or get it within the first week, which usually students, even if they had a BOG waiver or some other way of getting the textbooks, often they wouldn't come till the third or fourth week, and that is horrible in a biology class to not have the book. So it's made a huge difference for my students in my classes. So thank you very much for that.
Thanks, Sue. And bio played a big part in that. You all donated so many copies of textbooks. So we've got a lot of zoology, et cetera, on hand because of you all.
Awesome. So definitely, yeah, keep the questions coming, keep the recommendations coming, because this is, like we said, a process that is being built. And so we're driving towards efficiency here, and really it helps to get your feedback. And I think we can move on to Laura Mattoon. I'll hand it off to you to talk about credit for prior learning. And I'll just say, Laura, I think you can take the full 15 minutes. We can still definitely get a 10-minute break here coming up and, get folks some stretch time. So.
Sure, I'll do my best to make up some time for you all. So I'm dropping into the chat the links to 3 items. The first link is to the Board of Trustees agenda. Let me see if I can share my screen. And so in here's a little bit of background and some links to the state level policy changes that are sort of forcing the colleges across the state to take a review of our policies surrounding credit for prior learning. So in just brief history, in 2018, the California legislature passed 2 bills that were subsequently signed by Governor Brown that affected the way in which we award credits to students who may have learnings that they bring to the college from experiences outside of the classroom. The first bill explicitly focused on military training and required that colleges essentially establish consistent processes to use the American Council on Education standards for awarding credit to students who have a military transcript. The second bill required the Chancellor's Office to establish an initiative and look at a broad array in which students have learning that can be translated into college credit. Things like industry recognized credentials, CLEP, IB, AP, and student created portfolios where they can identify to a faculty member that they have these learnings that can translate into the learning outcomes identified for the course objectives. And so In reviewing those two bills and achieving compliance at the state level, the Community College Board of Governors adopted a state level regulation that requires every college in the system to update our board policies and our administrative procedures by the end of this year, this calendar year, December 31st. And we need to certify to the Chancellor's office that we've done that. And so these two policies have been making their way through our consultative process. And earlier this week, we presented the first reading of the board policy for credit for prior learning. So let me just share that with you. So essentially what the board reviewed on Tuesday is board policy 4235, which would update our existing credit by examination policy to instead reference credit for prior learning, that we would include assessments, but not limited to industry recognized credentials, student created portfolios, external standardized examinations, military training, transfer credit, and credit by examination. The policies and administrative procedures, or the administrative procedures, would be developed relying primarily on the advice of the Academic Senate. It is recognized as a 10+1 item. But we would also seek input from other sources, including industry experts, and that we would describe the process in the college catalog. So I'm just going to pause there and see if anyone has any questions they want to ask about the updated board policy, which had its first reading this week and will go to second reading at our December board meeting. Okay.
Actually, I have a question. When would this be in effect?
The idea is that this would take effect as soon as the administrative procedures and board policies are adopted, which need to occur by December 31st to be in compliance with the regulation.
Okay.
However, I would say that we've used some of these processes already to grant credit for students' learnings. And so I hope that what happens is really, in many ways, we're just codifying a process that's already been occurring. And I would invite Allie, and I know there are other faculty members, I think Brian, who've gone through the process of allowing students to earn this credit, to just share their experiences if they'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say briefly that, yeah, this is a process that essentially already exists, but we're codifying it, we're building it out, and we're making it just a little bit more clear for folks. Because I think when we had students kind of coming to us asking for this, it was sort of like, oh, what do we do? Kind of a who's on first, what happens next kind of situation. So we're really trying to build that out for students and make it more clear for them. And yeah, so we worked with Brian and Phyllis for a student who was putting together a portfolio for credit in art. And I think Phyllis, maybe you could speak to this since you were reviewing, since it was some 2D art courses that she was looking for. Phyllis reviewed the portfolios, but one of the things we're looking to do is to, for example, create a rubric that's more clear and something that could be used across the board with all faculty, and then tailored individually to departments as needed, but so that we're not starting from scratch. And so Phyllis, maybe you could speak to a little bit of how you approached that this time. And then Laura, I know we're working on figuring out a process to create a rubric that all of you feel comfortable moving forward with more broadly. But Phyllis, did you want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, this was the first time that I'd been involved in that. So it's not like we had a system in place. So I reviewed the portfolio for I think it was 2 courses that the student was asking to receive credit for, and one was granted and one was not. And that was basically based on my knowledge of the curriculum of both courses. And I can see that it would be good to have something a little bit more standardized in place to deal with that in the future, for sure.
So I wanted to just quickly walk through some of the highlights of the administrative procedures. These are still in draft form and will go before the board at the December meeting just as an advisory. I think folks should feel welcome to ask me questions or make comments now, but also if you want to take a closer look and send me an email after this meeting, I'd appreciate that as well. So just in terms of high level content, one thing that the administrative procedures would do is consistent with new state law that requires that after a student who's either a veteran or an active military member, anyone who holds a recognized industry credential, or anyone who requests courses for prior learning completes their education plan, they are required to be referred for to begin the process of assessment for prior learning. So that's one major change. Another requirement that was established in the state level regulation is that the student's academic record has to clearly show that the credit was earned by assessment of prior learning. And we need to make it clear to students that some transfer institutions may limit or not allow credit for prior learning. UC and CSU, we have a little bit more control over because there is state level directive that tells them that they need to accept this, but out of state institutions, and I know UNR was raised earlier as an example, may have different policies. So we just want to make sure counseling staff are helping students understand what the impacts might be for their future educational goals. Another major change at the state level was that credit for prior learning really should align when and wherever possible to the student's overarching plan, either to IGETC or GE breadth, or to local degree requirements, or whatever other requirements can align to a student's educational plan. Just awarding credit for prior learning without ensuring that it somehow aligns with their larger credential or degree goals could have a negative impact on their financial aid, particularly for veterans who have a limit on their award term. And then the other highlight I wanted to make here is that there is a requirement in the state level regulation that a student should be given the opportunity to accept, decline, or appeal a decision relative to credit for prior learning. The choice we made here in this policy is to just reference our existing grade change process, where a student can appeal a grade and have a student use a similar process if they wanted to appeal a decision around credit for prior learning. There's a state level requirement that we look at data and that we review our policy every 3 years. So you'll see that here in the administrative procedures. The definitions for assessment and sufficient mastery reference back to the state level regulation. And then the approved methods are outlined in items 1 through 9 here. You can, if you're interested, we could walk through the process for each of these, but essentially what we tried to do was aligned to what we already understand processes have looked like on the one-off situations where students have requested credit for prior learning. So I'm going to stop there and ask if people want me to walk through the process for each of these 9 methods, or if you want to review them on your own and send me questions. I'm happy to handle that in any way that you would prefer. And I know that we're a little bit behind on time, so you let me know what's most helpful.
I have a question. I wanted to, I assume that at some point, there will be a more in-depth training for counselors, because I have a lot of questions about if the student comes to me and says, I'm an artist like Phyllis had, and how do I know to even bring this forward? Can they do this for any single class they want, criminal justice, whatever? I feel like I need a little bit more information, and maybe after I read this, I'll have a clearer understanding, but I don't think everybody needs to hear all my questions, but
yeah, totally. I'll just do a really high level. So in general, the process would be the student identifies that they meet one of these requirements and they want to go through a prior learning assessment. Now, each one of these different assessments is a little bit different, but in general, the student would fill out a form requesting for the assessment, depending on the type of assessment. For example, if it's an industry recognized credential, we have the faculty in that department might decide they want to create a list of industry recognized credentials and how they cross over to course credits. So it might be really easy to just say, oh, your credential is on this list and here's your credits that are awarded. If it's a new credential, then or if it's a student-created portfolio, essentially the student would go to the faculty member or department chair and review the information with the faculty member or department chair to verify the learning outcomes. The primary responsibility for determining whether or not the student has achieved sufficient mastery would fall to the department chair or the designated faculty member in each department the course lives in. And then there's a couple of different scenarios, like for AP credit, there's a state level requirement that a student be given credit for an exam of a score of 3 or better. So in each one of these, it sort of walks through the state level requirements and then the process when there's not a state level requirement. And ultimately, like I said, it's the faculty member in the department or the department chair that's making the determination about whether or not the student has met sufficient mastery.
Laura, I'm wondering, you had mentioned the CSUGE and IGETC, and I know you and I are going to have a discussion on Monday, but from what I understand, that we haven't really gotten any information from them as to how that's going to work. Do you have a better pulse on that at this point? That are they brought into the fold and the AOs don't know?
You mean will they accept the credit?
Exactly. So they already accept AP, IB, and then the CSU system accepts CLEP. The UC system doesn't accept CLEP. So when we're moving in this direction, as the whole community college system is, what I haven't heard anything along the lines of a response from either of those two systems.
Here's what the chancellor's office has said, because this question's been asked to the chancellor's office on a number of occasions, and the response they give us is CSU and UC were involved in the advisory committee that helped draft these regulations, that this is in compliance with state law mandates. Now, I have also heard from other colleagues that some CSUs are challenging the number of credits awarded via credit for prior learning. Palomar, I think right now, is having a challenge with Northridge about whether or not they've properly designated on the transcript that it was for via prior learning and what the assessment method was. So I think our responsibility is to create a policy that follows the state level regulation and law. And as we discover challenges with UC and CSU accepting our students or their credits, we engage the chancellor's office to work that out at a leadership level. Right, because unlike community colleges, UC and CSU at the board level have the authority to simply do an executive order and mandate that these courses be transferable. I know that doesn't really answer your question in a satisfactory way.
It's just going to be a process, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's really positive. It's going to take a while for it to play out at the transfer level.
Yes.
But we'll talk more on Monday.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for making time for me on Monday.
Sure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Quick question following up on Christy's question. Is this applicable to any course in our catalog?
Yes. I mean, you know, there's probably courses in the catalog for which there's not a way to show sufficient mastery of the course outcomes, but I think the process relies on faculty and the departments to determine that.
Is anyone other than me wondering about the work implications of this if it gets really popular? Sort of a rhetorical question.
I asked today if there would be a way for colleges to claim apportionment for credits earned via credit for prior learning because of that. It sounds like it's a discussion, but I think you heard Jeff already mention that the state is facing some budget challenges. I would say that with the new funding formula and the focus on low-income students and students achieving funding specifically for low-income students and more funding for low-income students who achieve their goal, it is financially in our interest to find ways to help them accelerate through the process. But I think your point is well taken, that there's a workload and there's not at the current time a funding source from the state level associated with this workload.
Yeah, and I will say at this time, we're building out the process. There are more conversations to be had on sort of the more granular pieces of it, right? So the building out of the rubric that that can be used college-wide and then enhanced by departments as needed. I think, yeah, I definitely did jot down like a more intense, in-depth training for counselors on when to be really encouraging students in this direction and what might be less feasible. But I think overall, this is just a really fantastic opportunity for our students and for us to support our students and honor the learning that they've accomplished. All right.
I have one question for Laura. Where can we get access to that document?
Do you mean the AP and the BP, Sue?
I dropped it in the chat. Does this link work? Oops, sorry. I sent that to Sarah.
There should be links in the chat for the board item, the board policy, and the administrative policy.
I'm looking for the one that had the 9 ways that you could potentially get credit. Which one was that? I couldn't find it.
The link that I just dropped in the chat is for the administrative procedures. So that's the one. Yeah.
Thank you.
And like I said, if I would love feedback or suggestions via email as we work to finalize this. And then as Ali said, we'll be working with all of you on establishing a rubric so that we can make this as consistent, as easy as possible to comply with the state level requirements. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to come and present.
Well, thank you so much, Laura, for doing all this and putting this together. And I know a special thank you to Laura for doing this in Michelle Risden's stead as well. So we appreciate that as well.
Could I make one more comment?
Yeah.
I think this is actually, while you were talking about this, Laura, I just realized I have a student in my class who's an older student. She's not old, but she's in her mid-30s or late 30s, and she's switching careers entirely. And I just realized this would be great for this person who is kind of struggling with the idea of all the education she has to undergo. She's just starting. So I think this is a great way if we can grease the skids. And I totally hear what you're saying. I think it was Walter about the increased workload. I think there's something to that. I think we should see if we can get it on the sunshine list. Thank you.
Awesome, Sue. That was a great recommendation. And Sarah, Pierce, to your question, Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but challenge exams are just a part of that process, right? They're one of the ways.
Challenge exams for prerequisite or for course credit?
Sarah, did you mean for course credit? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, Sarah.
She's unmuted, but we can't hear her.
Oh, that's weird.
So
right.
Course credit.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It would, the course credit exams. So credit by examination, is that?
Yeah.
Covered in the policy. And it's pretty consistent with what was in our previous administrative policies. I only updated that section as was required by the new regulations.
Yeah, but I don't think the changes were substantial in that realm. With that, I do want to let folks get a 10-minute break. So let's maybe circle back here at 3:12. And Brad and I will just be super fast, and then we'll get on to kind of some of the work parts of the day. All right, thanks everybody. Take 10.
You said a stormy Friday?
It is a stormy Friday here. We got some kind of, well, at least where I'm at, it's sort of sleet-like, not quite snow.
Yeah, that's what I have out here in Myers as well, and it's super windy.
Yeah, kind of nice. I like it.
What's it doing in Connecticut, John? Massachusetts, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know in Connecticut, but in Massachusetts, it's rainy, it's damp. It's what we call in New England a raw day. It's about 40 degrees, drizzle, rain, and my arthritic hands and knees and everything just creaking like an old man.
Sounds very similar to here weather-wise.
Yeah, but it's different because any precipitation you get in Tahoe, it's just drier. The atmosphere is drier than down here. Just
totally
too wet, too damp.
Yeah. All right. Well, in the interest of getting us going, Brad, do you want to get us started on talking through some of the summer fall updates, and I can weigh in as well, and we'll just get things moving.
Yeah, thanks, Allie. So we're going to be quick on this and make up some time probably. Just to recap, I know you just heard it, but winter's going to look a lot like fall. Spring, we're starting to turn up the dimmer switch, in addition to all those classes that Jeff mentioned, kind of starting back online, including we're also including some music performance classes, et cetera. And then summer, fall will look a little bit more like traditional years, but perhaps not 100% back. So we're starting to phase back in. We just don't know what the future is going to hold, but we need to plan in the event that things are looking better on that. And it's a little easier, I think, at that point to pull back things. We can switch things to Eve, et cetera. But you're going to still see some Eve. You're going to see more hybrids and distance education than you would in a traditional year. But we're starting to move towards normalcy. I don't know how a better way to say that. So we're obviously, as registration starts on Monday for winter, spring. That means we're already in the thick of summer, fall schedule development. I almost said that right. So we're starting to send those out to department leads, as well as individuals who, like Jamie and Melissa and folks in counseling, et cetera, for those areas, particularly in career and technical education where we don't have any full-time faculty, to start to take a look at that. So we're really right now we're not getting down to the super specifics, staff, et cetera, but we're starting to really look at modality. So is it distance ed? Is it hybrid? Is it Eve? Is it face-to-face? You're going to see more face-to-faces coming, face-to-face classes coming back. Allie, to add?
Yeah. So as department chairs, you've kind of been getting those summer fall schedules. Thank you to those of you who have gotten your feedback in. That's like Brad said, this is a first look. This is a big picture look, and it is looking more like a traditional year at this point. That's not to say things can't change, but that's really where we think things are headed by next fall. And we obviously don't offer a ton of face-to-face offerings over summer, especially indoor ones anyway. What you did receive, I will note, also included ISP. So again, I just want to note we're really trying to help folks get a handle on what's being offered in ISP and really trying to integrate ISP into our planning processes moving forward. So we did have a slot for if you were ready to fill out instructors this far in advance. Awesome. You could start plugging them in and give folks notice. If not, it's obviously fine. I understand it's really far in advance. Like Brad said, it doesn't have to be that granular. It's more of, for those of you who do have adjuncts who really like to know well in advance what they're going to be teaching, that's your opportunity to plug them in and say, hey, I already secured you a class like next fall. The one point I'll add on modality decisions is that in addition to thinking about that, for some of the reasons we talked about earlier with Jeff of just like what makes sense for students and where are they thriving in some of these new modalities, I did want to flag that we'll also be looking into those modalities to account for some of the campus being shut down for the remodel for efficiency. So we do know that certain classrooms and certain lab areas will be basically completely taken offline. And so again, this is one of those lemonade moments for us, is that we now have a way to offer these classes to students and to maintain some of these courses, even though, for example, an art lab or a bio lab might be taken offline for a term. We have a way to make sure students are still accessing those courses in some really creative ways. So those will be conversations we'll be having at the department level as we get a really solid sense of both the nature of how the pandemic is going, but also the nature of what areas are going to be shut down for the remodel for efficiency. But yeah, it was a first look. Thank you for getting the information back. Now Ricky can start plugging away and doing her counting and at least getting the courses set up and ready to go. So I appreciate all of you being really timely and responsive on that.
And Allie, I was just going to do a quick definition, probably for Amber or anybody else who's brand new. I don't know if there's anybody else, but remodel for efficiency. It's a really big remodeling process, obviously, across our campus. It's going to really transform our educational spaces on campus, our student services, creating the faculty, what do we call it? Faculty village, all your, offices coming together a little bit. So it's really exciting. It's a partially bond funded. We're in the about 60% of the way through a 10-year, $55 million local bond, and the rest of it was supported by state matching funds. So it's about a $20 million project, and it's going to really bring our campus into the present and future. You're going to see a lot of the cool technologies that we've seen in those specific classes, classrooms. Those three kind of demonstration classrooms we called, and some of the technology even that you saw out at the University Center. So it's really exciting, but it will create some space concerns. If there's any silver lining to what we're going through right now is we can now do more things at a distance than we ever could before. So just wanted to give you a little background on that, really for Amber.
Yeah, all for you, Amber. Thank you for that, Brad. No, I think it's probably a good refresher for everybody who hasn't been super ingrained in it. And then I guess I'll pause. Are there any questions on summer fall before I move in? This last point is a really, really quick one. Questions, other comments?
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Sean said as far as projecting forward, primarily lab sciences, the transferability issue. We don't know. I think in all likelihood, the CSUs and UCs and most universities are not going to look too highly on lab sciences that are virtual other than during COVID, but we'll see.
Thank you. That's a really good flag for us to have and this early on. So yeah, those will need to be some meetings we have really early on to determine that. So thank you, Pete. Would you be the best one to be kind of counselor on point for that, Pete?
Yes, in all likelihood.
Okay, great. So I'll definitely kind of put on my radar to get some meetings set up with the sciences and you and myself and some administrators to talk through that, and probably some members of our facilities team as well, like Al for the remodel. So thank you for that note.
Sure.
Any other summer fall stuff, questions? All right. So this last point is honestly really quick. It's just, and Laura Mattoon, are you still here? I think she probably dropped off. So she has gotten a request for just for student representatives. I think this one in particular was for a student to represent on a essentially to be a voice about the new student-centered funding formula and to weigh in on policies that are impacting community colleges. And every now and then we get opportunities like that one for students to weigh in, and it's not always funding policy. It might be, curriculum policies. It could be a variety of different things, but we get these kind of opportunities. And especially now that we're not on campus, we just don't have that frontline access to students. And even always, you might be identifying students in your class who are just on point and want to engage at a broader level in the system and want their voices to be heard. And maybe they don't have time for Student Senate or haven't looked into Student Senate, but want to engage in other ways. And so this was really just a kind of a call out for if you have students in your courses that you think are kind of hungry for the opportunity to share their insights or their experiences at a broader level, at a statewide or system-wide level, honestly, just send them my way, send them to Brad. You can also reach out to Laura Mattoon as well. It really doesn't have to be anything more formal. Like this is not a formal nomination process. I think if we have an opportunity, if we have a bank of these students and just know who they are, we can connect with you and say, like what kinds of things would this student be interested in? So this is really just a simple way for you to just, if you have some all-star students in your class that you want to elevate and say, hey, this person might be poised for one of those opportunities that come your way, send them our way. We'll just throw them in a data bank so that when the opportunities come, we can circle back with you and just say, hey, like, what do you know about this student? Would they be a good fit for this opportunity? Does that make sense? Any questions, comments there? Good. All right. So I'll hope to have some emails from you guys of the all-stars in your classroom who are ready to make their voices heard broadly. All right, so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Walter, who I know has been emailing a lot of you about Program Mapper, just to give you kind of an update on that project and that process. And he's going to kind of tag right into Sarah, who's going to take us into our work for the day. So Walter, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Allie. My comments will be very brief, and really it's just thank you. Thank you all for how quickly and thoroughly and thoughtfully you looked at and critiqued and reviewed your portions of Program Mapper. I know you are focused primarily on your department's AAT and any certifications you had, and that was great. So really that's the main thing I want to say before I hand it off to Sarah. But I also just want to mention that in addition to some of the purposes of it for essentially for students to explore and navigate any changes in course of study, things like that, it will also be used by the college as a marketing tool for your department. So it does have some value from that perspective. And we are looking forward to going live with it. The aim is for early December for students to be able to use it. It's a little bit contingent on some other moving parts with multiple members of the team working on it, but that's the goal. But what that doesn't mean is that it will be set in stone. It will always be amenable to your input and your review and your modification, so it can be updated as you see fit. If your vision for your department as to what the best map would be for your students changes, you'll have an opportunity to modify what shows up on Program Mapper. And just by way of sort of transitioning over to Sarah's portion, I just want to sort of refer back to this Program Mapper sort of in the context of how it fits in with the meta major planning and mapping that you did in a task, well, the faculty collectively did in consultation with counselors and others to sort of do a preliminary look at what this would look like on a more specific to your department level. Those programs were considered, of course, when this was put forth. And I also just wanted to say, in terms of how this Program Mapper was developed, just although the material was drawn from the catalog, eLumen, Colleague, and other places, it was ultimately compiled and organized by counselors working on the ed plan. So that's a little bit more of the context, and that I believe is all I have to say about it before I ask Sarah to jump in.
Awesome. Thanks, Walter. And yeah, I just reiterate again what Walter said. We have been working on the Program Mapper for a while, and we used all of the input that faculty had during our guided pathways meetings. We had those maps. So specifically in the work groups that we're going to go into, where we're going to look at the meta major maps, I think this is a big piece that we've been kind of missing just in guided pathways. We have a program map for every major and every certificate, but the idea for today is to really take a step back and look at each meta major and look at a one-year plan. If a student came into arts, languages, and humanities as kind of an undecided major, but had picked that as a meta major, what classes could they take in their first year that would put them on a path towards something in that meta major? So that's what we're going to look at today. I am the one that created all the meta major maps. So if you have beef, come to me, and please be nice to your counselors that are in your group with you. Counselors, there will be a counselor in each group, and they'll just be taking your feedback. So this is just for you guys to review. Hopefully you've already reviewed them. And if you have changes that you want to make, you have a different idea of what type of general education class, or you have a question of why we picked a certain class, the counselor is able to answer those questions. Just know that this is kind of coming, when I created the maps, I wanted to make sure we had the golden 4 in there. So you'll see English 101. I did select English 103 because we want to make sure it's as transferable as possible to go to UC or CSU, speech, and then some type of math, depending on what the major is. So you will see all of that in the first year. And then hopefully some classes that fulfill general education requirements and are also part of that meta major. So that's kind of that was my theory going into making those meta major maps. And you guys all did a great job too, from the previous faculty meetings where you really worked on those a lot. So you made my job a little bit easier because I was able to go off of those. Do you guys have any questions about meta major maps in general, or program mapper, or anything before we kind of break up into our groups?
Sarah, before that, I just want to say this is super hard, as frankly all of you know, because you tried to do this in your meta major groups initially, right? Like, this is hard. We offer thousands of courses, and how do we create something that is going to be that is going to at least offer students a starting point. So I think it's important to remember it as a starting point for students, right? Because they might by the second term have kind of come to a conclusion about what they want to study, or the third term. But it really is something that we think can help move them along and help keep them, on track to complete in time. And also something that will really help, hopefully, kind of solidify their position within a meta major. And so a student who might not have that connection to folks within a specific degree will feel like they have a home. And I think that's important, because we know that that's important for student completion as well. So yes, as Sarah said, be nice. This is hard. Offer feedback, and this is a part of the process. We do want to make these available in Program Mapper. We do want this to be part of that marketing and outreach to students, so that they know what types of pathways are possible for them. But this will also be reviewed I think we're going to take these maps also to CLEMC to do some review, and just to double check that, it makes sense from an enrollment management standpoint as well. So this is kind of the first iteration. You will undoubtedly see these again. But yeah, thank you very much, Sarah and Walter, for all your work on this, and Sarah for creating those meta major maps, and counselors for leading the charge in these groups. We really appreciate it.
And no worries. I'm happy to help. But these are kind of more, definitely view them as marketing tools. Students will still meet with counselors and get individualized educational plans based off of, whether or not they need to be part-time or full-time, or, a certain class doesn't work with their schedule. So students will still get individual support. These are just something that would be on the website where they could get a better idea of what their courses might look like if they picked that meta major.
So now I know I interrupted does anybody have any questions before we roll in? I think everybody should have gotten an email from Lori earlier, right, with the meta major maps.
I sent it out last night, yes.
Perfect. Thank you, Lori, for doing that. So those are the maps that you'll be discussing in your breakout groups. And now is the magic where everybody's going to go to their breakout groups. So I think, Lori, if we could just aim to kind of pull everyone back here. Let's just do a 4:05 reconvening, since we're just a little over time.
Okay.
And folks, you can work with your...
She's the best.
No, this was the easy group. I hope that the other counselors are okay. They were a little nervous.
They'll be okay.
They'll survive.
The overachievers.
There we go. You got it. Well, since we got Brad, maybe Mike, why don't you ask him that question?
Fire away.
Yeah, Brad. So in our meta major, we have computer science, and we're a little concerned that that's the oddball in our meta major.
That is a weird one. Are you talking about for health and public safety?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know public safety is a weird one because like cybersecurity is public safety, and so it'll end up in the. I'm gonna stand up too, Walter. Because we're looking at including it into the public safety training center. We're at least putting it into our proposals to get money at the state to try to build a building, but those classes are all online. So anyway, it's an oddball. I think that it would probably fit as well in other meta majors as this one. It's just because we literally want to use that as leverage with the state, not for the meta major, but we try to use it as leverage for the state, being like, oh, look, we have education with all the search and rescue, we've got EMT, we've got fire, we've got criminal justice, kind of on, and then we're like, and cybersecurity, and so give us $20 million so we can build a building. So I don't know that really had anything to do with us putting that in the meta major, but that's some context. I agree with you. It's an odd.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks.
Welcome back, folks.
I'd like to see Tim and Mike together because Mike has like shaved all his hair off and it doesn't look like Tim's had a haircut for like since COVID. I'm like, this is awesome, right? And you guys right next to each other.
We could
Hi, Sarah.
Tim's hair with Michael's beard.
Yeah, I'm getting. I came out a little more than it normally does. Yeah.
How did that just happen? We were pulled out of the sciences, and now we're back.
Because
you ran out of time, Pete. Your time's up.
That's how this works,
It's
Pete.
the magic button.
Yeah.
I thought I was out, and they pulled me back in.
It's called technology.
Look at all that power that Lori has, wields over all of us.
It's in her
Are you
hands.
surprised? Are you surprised? Come on, guys.
You got the whole world.
Not surprised.
In your hands. You got the whole wide world in your hands.
Well, at least all the faculty. I don't know about the world.
Well, that's our world right here.
Do we have everybody back?
Hey, Bruce. Bruce, good to see you, Bruce. Cheers.
Yep, welcome.
Hey, John.
Bruce, I look forward to visiting your office, your suite when you've got one.
You already got the drink going, John, huh?
Oh, this is it's a coffee cup. It's a coffee cup.
Is that sleepy time tea out there in Massachusetts? Look, I discussed
There's
this
a
with
thing called monkey. There's a thing called monkey shoulder.
I discussed this with my meta major group. I think I'm the only one who openly flaunts what I'm drinking in these. The rest of you hide them in coffee mugs. But someday you'll be cool enough to just like embrace it and be like.
I have to tell you, Allie really intimidates me. She really intimidates me as a dean.
I know, right?
So I really have to be careful.
Yeah,
Although Bruce, remember on the soccer field, you and Sarah were sneaking them in. So you weren't.
Oh no, I wasn't sneaking. I am the reason that we got the everyone email about drinking at the soccer games.
And I'm pretty sure it wasn't Sarah.
That was you, man.
It was, unless Sarah was joining in, it wasn't Sarah.
All I know is that the first day that I did it, it was there were a lot of people whose names I shall not mention. But I took full responsibility because
you started it.
Because I'm who I am.
So. And John, I think you're absolutely correct to be terrified of Allie because she's with child during COVID and at home and can't leave. That would make anyone
let me tell you,
absolutely insane and want to kill anyone in a drop of the hat.
I step back from her. I just step back and
she's even coming at you on Zoom, it's like, woo.
It's the big belly. It's very intimidating, big belly.
Oh, wait a minute. Brad, my dean, Brad Deeds, is here. Well, Brad intimidates me too. He
doesn't.
But he doesn't have a big belly. I don't think anyone's buying.
All right. Well,
okay. What do we got?
Thank you, everybody. Honestly, this was just a chance. Honestly, I think we're just interested to hear what your reflections were. What you like? Was this hard? Was this straightforward? Do you feel like we have a good foundation? Just kind of general feedback from the process.
Science is set. We got it. We nailed it.
Nailed it. Typical science and math Just like, boom, done.
Beautiful. So to pass on in the sciences, it was deemed that there should be actually 2 one-year plans. The vast majority of students who are coming in that are interested in going into the sciences aren't going into calculus their very first term. So one flow that's as is, and then another flow where students would start into college algebra and do that sequence. And so we laid it out on paper.
That's awesome. That's really good feedback, and hopefully something we could reflect in the program mapper really clearly for students. Like, here's 2 ways to pursue lots of things in this meta major.
I think the other thing it does is that one of my concerns when I looked at it, the one flow, is that it could make students could be concerned if they were interested in the sciences and they see calc as that first quarter and they're not ready for that. There still is a path if they're ready to go into pre-calc that first year.
Got it. Other folks, other challenges or major wins?
Yeah, I had a reflection that there's just so many variables here with all these different classes and all these different majors that, but I have total confidence in our counselors when they meet with students that they'll put them on the right path for that individual. So thank you, counselors.
Yeah, definitely. I think what we definitely learned from all of this is that there's absolutely never a replacement for a counselor in this process.
Yeah, I think that's important too as we publish these program maps, is to just put in red, please talk to a counselor. You know, it's almost like a warning label.
And I think Katie Meyer said, because I think at this moment when folks might have been looking at the program mapper, I think it's like a note at the bottom, and Katie said they were trying to get it to be like something bold at the top of the page that had a button that actually linked them directly to a counselor. So I think we are trying to make that a really clear line for folks. Any other groups feel like they nailed it or had some interesting or insightful feedback?
Ours was pretty well laid out already. I think we just made it, I recommended one little minor addition, but other than that, ours was like good to go. So we got to discuss other things.
Nice, very good. And it, like everybody
was well said, Mark. Well said.
Ours, we also had we nailed it as well, I guess I would say. There was a recommendation from the English faculty to switch around some of the English courses just to make sure that ensure students have another quarter to take it, but we were all in line and happy.
Awesome.
Everybody nailed it because Sarah's amazing.
I think we could all agree. Yeah.
You took the words out of my mouth.
I would cheers to.
You guys are too nice. I'm glad it was an easy process for you.
Cool. Very cool. So hopefully this kind of puts a button on and brings full circle some of the work that I know you all started last year, and that's been ongoing through the counselors with the creation of DED plans, and now we've got these meta major maps. And I think again, as Jeff was saying this morning, we're really just trying to institutionalize and ingrain meta majors into everything we're doing here. And I think this is one more step forward in that way. Any other thoughts, reflections on the day? Any other, silly things anyone wants to throw out before we head out for the day? I'm more than happy to call a 3.5-hour Zoom meeting early. So.
Wait, it was 3.5 hours long?
I think
that was that.
Well, yeah.
For those of us that were here for all 3.5.
Yeah. When did you get here, Bruce? Like around 3 o'clock. Because I have class from 1 to 2:45. So.
Got it.
At least that's what I'm saying, and nobody's checking. So.
Well, for those of us on the East Coast, it's after 7 o'clock. It's freaking dark out there.
And refill the mug, John. Refill the mug.
Like Brad said.
Yeah, I'm going to have to.
Hey, I just want to say it's really fun to see all of you guys. I really miss all of you.
Totally.
Phyllis, good to see you. Glad to hear you're doing so well.
Oh, I'm doing awesome. You can't kick me down.
Yeah, my heart's there for you, girl.
I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
Did you answer my question, by the way?
Probably not. What was it?
Well, it was to you personally.
Oh,
I was asking if it was red wine or white wine in your mug.
Oh, as a fellow East Coaster, I got to give you some shit.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Deeds, any final words?
No, it's great to see everybody. Be safe, be dry out there. Have a safe
Dry.
commute to your living rooms.
All right, folks. We'll see you on the interwebs. Happy Friday.
I'll be back in December. See you all then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take care, everyone.
Thanks for the warning, John.
See you guys.
Deal.